All right. Thank you very much for joining this webinar on how civil society can contribute to reducing food waste. My name is Pablo Padrut. I'm head of economic affairs at the Embassy of Switzerland in Poland. And before we dive into the matter, let me give you a brief overview of the Embassy of Switzerland's contribution to the Circular Week 2020, which is happening right now in Poland, organized by Innowo, who are also hosting this webinar. So thank you very much to Innowo for making this possible. So the embassy is very committed, of course, like all of Switzerland, to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the goals is that we have to reduce waste by half until 2030. And one aspect of this will be discussed today, that's food waste. So this morning we had a zero waste breakfast prepared by Chef David Gaboriot at the residence of the ambassador with representatives from the food industry, a biogas company, and NGOs and civil society. Now with the webinar, we want to dive into the topic of what civil society and each one of us can contribute to reducing food waste in our daily lives. And on Friday, so day after tomorrow at 11:40 a.m., we'll have Professor Gerhard Schmidt of ETH Zurich, who is the director of the Singapore ETH Center. He will present virtually his research on how to make cities more sustainable. So stay tuned on Friday at 11:40 a.m. for this contribution by Professor Gerhard Schmidt. But now it's time to talk about how all of us can contribute to food waste reduction. And it's my pleasure to welcome Markus Hurschler, co-managing partner of the consulting company Foodways from Bern. Markus will discuss the topic with Maria Kowalewska, Michał Mikołajczyk, and Katarzyna Matej. He'll introduce them to you in a second. So welcome everybody and happy webinar.
Thank you, Pablo. I'll take it from here. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone, to the webinar. This is for us, this is a follow-up at the embassy to a very insightful breakfast we had with people from the food industry as well. So now we're going to be focusing on the civil society part. And I'm excited to have all those Polish representatives here. I will be starting now with giving you a little bit of an insight into what the sort of food waste picture is looking like in Poland, and also kind of, try to inspire you a little bit around civil society, or try and, show one or two examples of what's happening around civil society in Switzerland. Jacek, please go on with the presentation. Whenever I talk the food waste issue, I try not to show waste pictures, because that's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're trying to get away from. Food is an extremely emotional thing. Food is what's keeping us together. Food is what we do, what we consume when we have social gatherings. At the moment, a little less because of COVID, but it's the glue of society. And when we look at food waste as a topic, let's get emotional as well, and let's sort of look at the extreme scale of the numbers and really sort of become activists and passionate food savers, all of us. So that's what we're trying to do here today as well, is to inspire people to become active in their daily lives as well. Jacek. Trying to research the extent of food waste in Poland, I came across a very nice report from Politica Insight that was established in 2018, so 2 years ago. And they tried to kind of guess, it's really a guess of what the numbers of food waste in Poland are. Currently it looks like there is roughly 247 kilos of food waste per capita in Poland. This adds up to 9 million tons of organic waste that ends up in landfill or incineration. So this is the scale of the problem that is kind of comparable to other European countries. But it's not lower than in other European countries. It's quite the same, or even a little higher. You see, I put there the kind of the ranking for other countries in the European Union. So there is the case for action in Poland is definitely here. So that's the bad news. The good news is the second yellow highlighted number, that's the 62%. Those 62%, they represent Polish private people who believe that households bear a primary responsibility to limiting food waste. Now that's really good news because this shows that people privately, they think they are part of the problem. And when you think you're part of a problem, you're also more likely to become part of the solution. So in terms of civil society, I think Poland actually has a very good starting point of people having a really high problem awareness and hence also a sort of readiness to take action. So I've said it this morning already, and I would like to repeat it also in this group. We're going to need 1 million solutions to the food waste issue in Poland because there's also 1 million sources and reasons why we actually have food waste. So behind this yellow graphic, it should have been an animation, but unfortunately you can't see the first graphic now. So if you think of food as a value chain from agriculture all the way to consumers, there's 1 million reasons why something ends up as food waste or is, sort of selected out or goes to biogas or goes to, whatever other destination. And now we have to think of solutions to all of these sort of reasons and sources of waste. And now we don't want to go into all this big picture, but we really want to focus on what can civil society contribute to solving this problem. Jacek? Now, one example, obviously, is the food donation area. We're going to have a Polish contribution on that as well in the webinar. In Switzerland, the food donation organizations, the food banks, they've got quite a history for a couple of decades. I'm not going to go through that because I think every country sort of has this. What I think is important to mention is that the food banks, the larger food banks in Switzerland, they were successful at creating long-term partnerships with major retailers and wholesalers. So they don't have to organize all the logistics themselves. They can rely on the retailer logistics. They don't have to buy trucks themselves or, maintain big warehouses. They can count on the support of those large organizations that have all the infrastructure. So this is, I think, a very good backbone in Switzerland to increase and scale the amount of food that's being donated to people in need, or maybe even in the food sharing area. That's a bit more recent. A topic they're working on at the moment around food donations, and I would be happy to discuss this around the Polish context, is how can we change the rules or the regulations or the interpretation of existing regulation to increase the amount of food that can be donated. Because today we have a lot of legal frameworks that are in the way of donating food that would actually be perfectly fit for consumption. One of the food banks in Switzerland is working with a university and also with the Swiss government on changing those regulations or changing the interpretation of them. Now, another example of more around education and consumer awareness, I think I quite like the apple juice example. That's the bottom left one. That's an NGO, or actually a social business rather, that's kind of trying to solve two issues at the same time, or work on two issues at the same time. On the ecological issue, that we have a lot of fruit that is not being utilized in Switzerland. There's a lot of fruit trees that are not being harvested anymore because the cultures are not big enough. So the fruit will just fall on the ground and rot. What they do is they go and harvest these fruit, and they integrate people who are no longer fit for the first working market. So there's a social element connected to a really tasty and healthy food product in the end, and they market it as a juice with a mission, which I think is great marketing and great education and sort of consumer awareness work connected to a business model. Another example, and also the last one, is a new movement called Madame Frigo. Now, a lot of Polish people speak French, so I don't think I have to explain this. And this project, you see the map with the yellow dots. This project is all about setting up fridges in public places where people can, help themselves or provide food they don't eat or cannot eat, and they just put them in the fridge and other people can come and serve themselves. Now this goes kind of in the food sharing area, so Kasia is going to be able to give us more input on the Polish context. I really quite like this project because it's just it's got a nice branding, it's cool, and it will work on the taboos and the sort of no-goes around sharing food being kind of a little not so hygienic, and you don't really want to do it, and they really work on the branding of it and on the communication side of it. So I think there's some potential on changing social sort of taboos and mindsets. So this much from me. I will be asking a lot of questions to our Polish partners here. Also, the webinar participants, please shoot questions through the chat box. I'll be integrating them in the discussion. And now I would like to hand over to the next presentation. That is Maria. She's a manager for food safety and quality at the Polish Food Bank Federation. Maria.
Hello, all of you. My name is Maria Kowalewska, and as I was already presented, I work for Federation of Polish Food Banks. And as you can see on a slide, the title of the presentation is "By Wasting Food, Wasting Our Planet." And I would say in this sentence, you can have a philosophy of the food banks. So when we think about wasting food, of course, we are thinking about wasting our sources of food, but at the same time, we think about wasting social, economic, and environmental point as well. So I'm gonna try to present you idea of the food banks through these points as well. Please, the next slide. So the idea of the food banks actually came from the United States, and that was in the 60s. The John Van Hengel simply realized that there is a source of food, like there was already on the garbage from the supermarkets, that can be used for the social needs. And basically, he made a link between the supermarkets and the charity organization and tried to rescue at that point, but now we are going to say more, reuse food for the needs of the charity. And this movement in the United States grows very fast, and it's already more than 800 kind of food banks, but they call it American Second Harvest in the United States. And the 80s, actually, the idea of the food banks comes to Europe, and basically it was set up in France. And the France, I would say, is the heart in Europe of the food banks as themselves. So, and from the France in the 90s, the first Polish food banks was set up in Warsaw. And today, as you can see on the map, there are many, actually there are 24 member organizations that create a federation, European Federation of Food Banks. And some of them, of this members, there are individual food banks in the countries, but some of them, they already set up a federation. As example is a Polish Federation of the Food Banks. Please, the next slide. And when you see the map of food banks, and in general, when you think about food banks as themselves, basically you can, I mean, it comes to the head that food banks is something connected to the food and redistributing food. But there are many different charities that they are doing that job. But if you want to really be a food bank, you need to have these three priorities common all around Europe, actually. So first priority is to giving food free of charge. So we receive food for free, and also this food is distributed through the charity organization, not very often to individuals, but also free of charge. So that's the first very important principle. The second principle is that food is distributed to any people in need, and it really doesn't matter if you are it really doesn't matter your nationality, your beliefs, your gender. Like, this is really not important. As long as you are a person in need, you can count on the food bank's help. So that's the second very important priority. And the third one is, like, by working as a food banks, we really want to make change to the how much food is wasted. So we work on the food waste issue by supporting supermarkets, producers, as well also primary productions to fight food waste on every single stage. Also, we do the education to consumers. Please, the next slide. And back to Polish Federation of Polish Food Banks, there are already 31 food banks in Poland. And we cooperate with more than 3,500 charity organizations, very different ones. Some of them are preparing a food by themselves. Some of them just distributing food through their organization to the people in need. And actually in 2018, we distributed 83,000 tons of food, but last year it was around 63,000 tons of food distributed to the people in need. And with this help, we support around 1.5 million people. That from that number, around 250,000 people, they are just children. So you can see that the help is very spread very widely. Please, the next slide. And just to give you an idea how food banks work in Poland, as Markus said, there's a way of organization in Switzerland, because as he mentioned, there's in Switzerland, food banks basically depend, but in a good sense, let's say, from the sources from distributors. So they can use the warehouses or trucks that they belong to distributors or any other food providers. But in Poland, it's a bit different. Like each food bank has their own warehouse. Sometimes it's very modern, as you can see on the picture. Sometimes it's a bit, let's say, older, using different sources. But basically, as you can see, it's a warehouse with the shelves fitting with the food, where the food came, and food is distributed to charities. And actually, we're very happy where there's less of food. If the shelves are empty, it means that we work very effectively and the food is distributed very well, very fast. Please, the next slide. So you can also see some pictures of how we work on a daily basis. And of course, the most important point of our work, there are people, and people that work as workers, as volunteers. Those volunteers works in the warehouse, but also support our activities, such as, for example, food collection. Please, next slide. And basically, I was also asked about just to explain a little bit how much food is wasted in Poland. Markus gave us some data, so I'm gonna focus on maybe some other points. Like, I want to just focus how much food, what kind of food is wasted. And most of the food that is wasted is there. It is of course bread, meat, some fruits and veggie, potatoes, or dairy products. I don't think it's surprising, because it's very common that those products are has a very short life, let's say, and it's very often that those products are became waste by our activities. And when we comes to the reason why food is wasted, most of the time because we are missing expiry date, sometimes because we are over shopping without the list, proper shopping list, and we prepare too large portions, so we are not able to eat that portion, portion, and sometimes because we don't know how to store food properly, and for that reason also food is wasted. So we don't know either we should put veggie or fruits to the fridge or should be put it on the shelves, for example. And can I have the next slide, please? And just give you, because we think about, the idea of this presentation was also to give some points how we can avoid food waste. So from the consumer perspective, of course, we can make a shopping list, we can check the expiry date, we can reuse the food as kind of do the food banks as well, share food. There are other ideas like first in, first out is about how to storage food properly and use products first and what should be used as a last. And of course, plan your meals. It could be very useful too to reduce food waste as themselves. Please, next slide. And back to food bags again, because we, as I mentioned, this fighting food waste is also about, and maybe that's one of the most important things, is also about education. So we do lots of campaigns that encourage people to not wasting food. And some of these campaigns focus on perfect imperfect. So we're doing this with the Tesco company, and we encourage people to use imperfect fruit and veggie that you can buy in a shop. With the macros, we also encourage people to take food home, not to leftovers in the restaurants. And for example, this is a very popular campaign, not to leave one single banana in the shop, because it's very unpopular to buy one single banana when it's left, not in the bunch of bananas. So as our company said that and many of the wasting food is that single banana, and that's why we also create that campaign, not to leave the single banana, but to take it and buy it. And my last slide is to, actually it was the last slide was the website name, and I strongly invite you to our website, bankiżywności.pl, where you can follow our results and you can follow our projects and results, what we do on a daily basis, and how you can also participate as an individual, but also as a company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. I'm sure we're gonna have good follow-up questions there on the state of the food banks. Now, moving on from the food donation aspect, I'd like to invite Michał. He is a proxy at Recopol to dive into the sensitive topics of packaging, plastics, etc., and its diverse roles in the food waste discussion. Please bear in mind we only have 1 hour, so make the presentations nice and quick, so we also have some time for discussions.
Hello to everybody, still good morning. I hope that you can hear me as well. You see the presentation. Before I start as a Recopol, let me just add one comment to Maria's presentation. I'm Red Cross volunteer. It's just to confirm that how many NGOs receive support from Banki Żywności, and we are able, that's enable us to provide the support people in need. Thank you to Banki Żywności for the great work. And now I'm putting out the red hat, putting the green one as an environment and Recopol. May I ask you, the next slide, please? Just few words who the Recopol is. It's a company that supports entrepreneurs who introduce goods, products, food as well into the market to fulfill the legislation obligation, recycling and recovery targets. You can hear the companies that establish Recopol. We are only one packaging recovery organization based on the non-for-profit fundament. This allows us to conduct many awareness campaigns to build the civil society awareness. for the consumer, but for the producers and companies as well. We cooperate not only with these companies, what you see on the screen, but we have the pleasure to cooperate with more than 2,500 companies that covers more or less every 1/3 of packaging that is introduced to the Polish market. May I ask you for the next slide? Why packaging? The main point, why the function of packaging is protection, particularly when you think about food as a product. We as a consumer, we want to buy products that they are safe. Of course, we want them that they are nice packaged, they are easy to transport, they are easy to storage, they are easy to use. But of course, the protection is the key role of each and every packaging. And protection, when you think about the unit packaging, that means packaging that you touch as a consumer, that it's this what you bought is packed just for the unit packaging, but for the for the transport packaging as well, it's impossible that each and every product will go from producer through the retail and towards our refrigerator. It has to be packed that is still the main function to protect, to ensure that this what we buy is this what we want, that this what will never act against our health. Plus, to be sure that this what we bought as a consumer will serve us as long as it was produced to serve to us. So it means that protection is against wasting, especially when we think and we say about the food. May I ask you for the next? 80%, this is so important, 80% of the life of the packaging, when it starts to become a waste packaging, it starts at the level of projection of the food, but at the packaging as well. It touches very important role of business, of entrepreneurs. It means the extended producer responsibility. How to think about the product, but the packaging as well at this stage. This stage is crucial for this. If the packaging will protect the food, but plus if it will save the food, plus if it will go, for example, to the recycling. So it means very comprehensive point of thinking about the environment, about the waste of food, but about the recycling issue as well. So eco-design in the meaning, not only that for example, plastic bottle will go to the recycling and will be recycled, but eco-design in the frame of taking care of good, especially when we think about the food. May I ask for the next slide, please? Just not to bother you with the percentage, I'm up to your disposal during the meeting and afterwards as well. 10 years ago, the whole world had one enemy. It was Bin Laden. Now, plastic enemy number one. And it's so easy to jump from one side to another side. From the moment when plastic was everywhere to the moment when the whole world is saying plastic is bad. It's not so easy. Thinking about the wasting, the food as well. Of course, the balance is important. The awareness of producers, consumers as well. But there are examples when exactly packaging and exactly with the contact of the food act very important role. Prolongate the date that we can use the food. So still coming back to the protection. You can see this on the products, and you know as a consumer. So you can easily judge, let's say, some actions that took place in the retail when some consumers were unpacking the food, the goods, and throwing or giving back to the cashiers the packaging, the plastic packaging. Not judging, but just to showing you that it's not so easy to say for 100% it's bad or not. It has to fix to the product, to the moment, of course, with this balance, ecological and economical balance as well. May I ask you for the, yes. Eco-designing is not so easy. It's not to taking you to the journey now, but we as a consumers, let's think about all this part of food wasting as well. When we are choosing the product, take the time to have a look at the packaging as well. What is the balance between the marketing and ecology? Always question on the entrepreneur side. People from environment, people from safety, and from other side, people from marketing. What the packaging should be. Of course, marketing role as well, but once again, protection of the good. You see, in each and every part of this circle, there are things that they influence the packaging and the way how it afterwards could be recycled, but having in mind the safety of the product as well. May I ask you? And this would one just example. Very often, I think that all of us, at least half of us, we know ketchup packaging, for example, in glass, leaving the plastic for a while. Beautiful glass bottle with a very, very long packaging, and so hard to take off the ketchup from the bottle. So often our fingers are with ketchup, so often knife is with the ketchup, so often part of the ketchup remains in the bottle when we are throwing it. Of course, we throw it to the glass. It means yellow box of the selective collection. So shape of the packaging, it has common with the food wasting as well, not just with the recycling, but food wasting as well. Just to give you few hints that this topic is combined with our main challenge of civilization, but main challenge of today's meeting that hosts Swiss Embassy is conducting. Thank you for doing businesses and doing things like this and introducing many people, many parts of the value chain, because it's the next example of the activity that covers interest and interesting of many people and many parts. Thank you for this part.
Thank you, Michał. I'm going to be happy to throw a couple of questions at you around packaging. Kasia, we're going to go to the last presentation for this webinar. Kasia is coordinator and volunteer at Foodsharing Warsaw. Foodsharing being a social movement that's been popping up in all the European countries, also in Switzerland, but Kasia will be able to tell us more about it.
Thank you very much, Markus, and thank you for the invitation to speak at today's webinar about a social movement that I am proud to be part of on a daily basis, and it's very dear to my heart. It's called Foodsharing, and we as a movement encourage and help consumers to prevent waste by sharing excess food that they have with others, and in that way, I hope love food more and waste less. So on the next slide, you will see that for these few minutes, can I have the next slide, please? I will touch just on 4 points in these short few minutes. I'll tell you a little bit about our mission and work, and then our main work, which is establishing food points and recruiting and coordinating a network of volunteers, and then to leave you with some 3 short action steps for you to get involved personally in reducing waste. But before that, can I have the next slide, please? I'll tell you a little bit about our origin story, because it all started in 2016 with 2 very regular but yet incredible girls, Karolina and Agnieszka, who actually met at food banks as volunteers and decided to pursue a different project. They knew about food sharing taking place in Germany, so they went to see the founders of the movement and got their blessing to start it in Poland. So the first social fridge, is what they called it, was at the Institute of Psychology in Warsaw. And as you see, it got a lot of media attention. So much that within a year, the first 7 food sharing points were established in Warsaw, and a group of volunteers also met to work in this project. 2-3 years later, food sharing is no longer just a movement in Warsaw, but it happens in all the big cities in Poland. And in Warsaw itself, there are 18 food sharing points that people can come and visit on a daily basis. So moving on to our mission. On the next slide. It's very simple. So we work to save food from being wasted, and we encourage sharing food by everybody and all types of food. In this way, we are different than food banks because we don't cater specifically to people that are in need of food help, but we rather build on a sense of responsibility for everybody to prevent the waste that we all do create. So our mission is to make it simple, and our mission is to make it accessible. And in that way, I also think that we fill a niche, because I don't know another organization in Poland that would work on this grassroots level and that everybody could participate in. On the next slide, we see that apart from opening food sharing points all over Poland, a big part of our mission is filling those food sharing points with food, which means that our network of volunteers works with a number of places, such as restaurants, cafes, bazaars, bakeries, or individuals who hold some big events and they know that they will have excess food that they won't consume. This means that our volunteer comes, packs up the food, and brings it to the food sharing point already in small portions, so everybody can enjoy the delicious food. Another part of our work is also education. So doing meetings like this, and possibly in person, we try to tell as many people as possible to get the word out about food sharing. So I mentioned food sharing points, and on the next slide, you will see that they come in all shapes and sizes. There's no rules on how the perfect food sharing point should look like. However, we do encourage a few basic things. First of all, each food sharing point has a fridge, so you can store all the goods that are perishable and have a short term, need to be refrigerated, need some specific temperature conditions. You can place them in the fridge. And there's also a place for leaving the dried goods that you have. Another important factor is that the food sharing point is accessible for everyone 24/7. That's the ideal situation. So you can walk there at any time and leave or take food that you need. Also, if it is in an enclosed space or under a roof, that's awesome, because it it helps the food sharing points function all year round without any disruptions. They can also be very creative. As you see on the right-hand side, there's a little cabinet that's been directly integrated right into the wall of one of our food sharing points. On the next slide, you'll see that we encourage, not yet, but here you see that we have, like I said, established 18 food sharing points in Warsaw. However, just during COVID, we have closed some of them and made sure that the ones that do remain open have the highest standard of hygiene and are safe for everyone to use. While as in Poland, there's over 55 food sharing points. This is the state for mid-2019. And now on the next slide, we encourage some basic rules while visiting these food sharing points. So first of all of them have a set of rules that are literally physically plastered, so you can see exactly if you can or cannot put a certain food in the fridge or in the cabinet. But if you are there, we encourage you to be first and foremost responsible. So you leave products that you know are safe to consume and that you would consume yourself. So if anything doesn't smell that good, or you're not really sure if you can still eat it, don't leave it at a food sharing point. When you do visit a food sharing point as a potential consumer, we encourage trusting others. So don't be afraid to take the food that is there. You do it on your own, with your own responsibility in mind. But from experience, I know that the products that are left there are consumable, they're good, and they're fresh products that people leave and really want to reduce their waste in that way. And each food sharing point has a volunteer who takes care of the cleanliness of the point. We also do ask people, if you are there, to take a look and maybe tidy up a little bit. Each point has cleaning materials for it to be, for the place to be nice and tidy for anyone who visits after you. And then moving on to another part of our movement, which is food savers. And these are volunteers who help rescue food, like I mentioned, from different venues. It's easy to join our movement. You just have to contact us, leave us a message that you want to become a volunteer. We provide you with a very short questionnaire to get to know you and how you got to know about our movement. And we provide you with some more detailed rules on how we operate, what our values are, and what kind of a conduct we expect from our volunteers. If you accept them, then we invite you to 3 supervised food rescues with other more experienced volunteers. So we show you the ropes and make you feel comfortable with rescuing food. And if that goes well, then the next point is inviting you to our Facebook group and to our platform where you can individually sign up. Still back 1 slide. So you can individually sign up, 2 more back. You can easily sign up and then rescue food on your own terms, which means that if you have just a little bit of time in 1 week and more time on the other, you're free to sign up to various food sharing points, to various venues to pick up food whenever you can help. For the time being, we have 100+ activists working in Warsaw and 30 venues for daily food pickups. I have to mention that this number was greater before COVID-19 happened. And I hope that within a short time, we'll be able to come back to cooperating with more places. On a monthly basis, we calculated that with that bigger number of places cooperating, we were able to save more than 1,000 kilograms of food per month, which gives 12 tons annually, but most of all gives you a perspective of how much food can be saved with just a small group of volunteers and a small number of places that participate in this movement. And now if we move on to the next slide, I'd like to leave you with 3 little short action steps because I myself joined the movement a year ago. I found out about it on Facebook and I really got hooked in. So I encourage you to take a look wherever you are for similar initiatives in your area, because maybe someone where you live is trying to fight food waste. And if not, feel free to contact us at Foodsharing Warsaw, and we will be happy to give you guidance like we did to other institutions that wanted to start food sharing points in Poland. Once you get the basics, ask a friend and find a friendly place where you can start your own food sharing point. As I said in the beginning, Karolina and Agnieszka started just with 1 fridge in a friendly place in the Institute of Psychology that was happy to host them. And again, from experience, I know that a lot of people are very happy to help in what I think is saving the world, essentially. So you'll be met with enthusiasm and a lot of goodwill to help you start this out. And then spread your news on social media. Show people that you can get involved, that it's worth getting involved, and it really does make a difference. And again, I'm sure others will join you and be happy to feel the daily satisfaction that I do after I rescue food, because it really is a huge sense of fulfillment. And then on our last slide, I would just like to thank you to listening about food sharing. If I won't be able to answer some of your questions during the webinar, write our contacts. It's Foodsharing Warszawa and Warszawa at foodsharing.pl. Eat, share, and love food. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kasia. I'd like to follow up with you directly. You're warm now and speaking, so I have a question for you from the audience. Jakub, he says that he finds a lot of food in dumpsters, and he starts sharing it. So he's kind of a food sharer in his own terms. Now his question is, how do you speak about it as an individual and promote it to make others feel that same responsibility he feels, or maybe also you feel? So my question to you, I guess, would be, what mobilized you, and how do you, where do you get all the energy from to actually make this probably a significant part of your day from what you've been sharing here now?
My main motivation to join food sharing in Warsaw is that I saw so much food waste all around the world that it just broke my heart, to be honest. And I took it very personally because I feel like I have the power to really change the world in my small little daily actions. That was my main motivator. So I got in touch myself with food sharing, and I went through all the processes that I told you about. So through the recruitment stage, I met the people, and I just wanted to get involved much more than just as a regular volunteer. So I moved on to be a coordinator to do a little bit on my part. I think the way to talk about food waste is actually talk about it personally. Think about it, make it part of your daily life, being mindful of it. I know that each and every one of us has maybe a little a little personal plan to build here, because we don't think about how much food we waste. We're very focused on that we want it fast and that we want it cheap. And food has a huge value, it's a financial value, and it has a value because some people don't have it. And we also forget about that there's still hunger and there's still poverty in the world. And if you want to talk about it, I would start by saying that you first and foremost have a personal responsibility because you are the source of action. Then encourage people to pay attention to it, and then encourage them to join Foodsharing is my recommendation, to get in touch with us and just to write to us, because I know that we answer every message. And even if you have a small event, maybe not a small event, like a wedding. So we have people who just call us and say, hey, we have a huge wedding. We're going to have excessive food. Can someone come and pick it up? We will react and we will help you.
So make it personal, Jakub. I hope Foodsharing has a new volunteer now. I have another question from the group around expiry dates. Another issue that is driving people and has a lot of sort of uncertainty attached to it. So the question is there a website in Poland or any other source of information that we can use as private consumers to sort of judge how long I can use a product? Or maybe when I can't use it anymore. Maria, do you have an idea, or anyone else? Do you know a good source for information on this?
I'll try to respond to this question. First of all, I mean, the problem is that we as a consumers don't really see the difference between best before and use by. Because on the shelf, we can only buy food that is fit to the dates. And it really doesn't matter if it's, as I said, it's a best before or use by. It needs to fit to the date that is written on the packaging. And also from the food donation perspective, we cannot receive food that is best before. So as a consumer, we are completely confused because, as I mentioned, in the shop, we cannot buy food that is out of date. And we cannot donate this kind of food, but in fact, we can eat that food at home. But because we are not used to, we don't understand the difference between best before and use by, we are tend to throw it away, this kind of food. And it's many times reflect to the, for example, tea, coffee, flavors, pasta, rice. We just think that if it's out of date, we need to throw away. And actually, yesterday we just presented research that shows that many of that products are perfectly eatable even 6 months after the date that was written on the package. So, and with the very strong responsibility, our researchers said that with the 1 month more, for sure you can eat that product with no safety regarding the safety issue. So again, as a consumers, we need to be sure either these products refer to best before or use by, because I'm not encouraging anybody to use to eat food that is used by, for example, milk or dairy products, meat, and so on after the date. This is product that can be very unsafe to our health if we eat after the date, but many of them, they are perfectly safe, but we don't know just the difference. So again, there's not really one website, but if you really pay attention to your package, to the packaging, you can find best before or use by, and simply you can follow these guidelines.
Thank you so much, Maria. I got a website posted in the chat box. It's a website from Too Good To Go. It seems like there is some information around date labeling attached to it, so check it out.
There are many websites. I would say there are many websites that refer to best before and use by, but after best before, nobody gonna tell you how long you can, for how long you can extend food shelf life, because it's very to individual, as it depends on the packaging, depends on the food storage condition, many aspects that you can you need to take into account. So you will not find maybe exactly how long you can extend the products, but then you can find the difference. So for that,
right. So it's about consumer education as well, and sort of we need to know. We basically just need to know more about food again, right? So referring back to I think that's a good point from the chat as well. There's an initiative, a startup out there in Poland as well called Too Good To Go. So that's another way of maybe engaging in eating what could be leftovers but is not yet. So download the app to Good to Go. I think that could be an option as well. Now we have a lot of questions about legal issues around food sharing as well. And I would like to ask you, Maria, another question. Would you approve of a legal obligation to donate food for businesses, for the Polish food banks, or what other legal frameworks do you think could be or should be changed in order to save more food? Maybe a question to you, Maria, and also Michał, on your sort of food industry expertise. What's the most important legal aspects?
Actually, in Poland, we already have an act, the national act, that put responsibility on the distributors, basically the supermarkets or hypermarkets, to donate food for the charities. And actually, they need to sign the agreement between charity and supermarkets. And if it's some food still good to donate, they need to donate. But if they make some leftover, I mean, not leftover, but if they still have some food that is thrown away, they are going to pay some contribution to the charities with this amount. How much food is wasted, the amount of money is going to be paid to the charities for this for the needs of food redistribution. And there's also an obligation to make education campaign. And actually, you can follow right now, because there are many education campaigns start in supermarket, also with the cooperation with the food bank. So I would say from the legal perspective, we already have an act, but act just refer to the distributors. And from food bank perspective, we're gonna give this proposition to make it a little bit larger, for example, to encourage food producer to have the same legal obligation, because we already have this kind of experience that with this legal obligation, even if it's just signing agreement, it's not a decision to donate food, it's just signing agreement between a charity and supermarket. It became much bigger donation day by day, because people start to work on the issue. So also with the food producers, that can work very perfectly. We are not sure yet with the primary production, because it's a different regulation regarding primary production. So this is much more complicated, let's say.
Yeah.
But
so maybe this question to you, Michał, you're looking at this topic in a much broader sense, also including the packaging topic, and looking at it from a circular economy point of view. Where do you think the civil society sort of needs support from the lawmakers? What role of government do you see in this topic?
I think that one more remark it could be given here in this part. When we think and look how many % of the food is wasted in Poland, not retail, who counts money very well, is the source where the food is wasted. But there are our households, close to 60% we lost at households. So very huge awareness, educational campaign, and many motivators have to be interlinked and started in Poland. Law could be one of the solution. It's only 1 year when we as households, we have to do selective collection with bio as well, this known brown box. But since it's the newest source of waste that we do in households, there is still a lot of questions: what to throw, how it should operate. Of course, immediately we can see that law has to be adjusted to this. To this issue. For example, the way that only waste management companies that take from us all other packaging like glass, paper, so the periods of 2-3 weeks to take the brown box from our doors, it's too long. So it looks that different companies dealing only with the bio-waste have to have access to this waste. Thinking about producers' point of view, eco-design for sure has to have links into law, but it's not only one thing that is missing in Polish law. Unfortunately, the whole circular economy package, the extended producer responsibility, still wait for Polish regulations to fix it once and forever, to create good conditions to entrepreneurs, to producers, to do things in proper way. In proper way, it means in taking care of the food waste as well. So it means the protection of the protection function of the packaging, but it has to be not only goodwill of the company, crossing fingers that consumer will see the attempts, but it has to be written in law. So for sure, Polish ministry, Polish parliament members, wake up for the good of the food waste as well.
Thank you, Michał. So we're soon hitting the hour. So I would like to highlight a contribution in the chat function. Anna just published a link to the newest research and publication on food waste in Poland. It's a 2020 publication, so definitely, click on that link and check it out to see maybe more insightful numbers on the Polish statistics. That's great. So we've seen a lot of different angles today. You do see that the topic is huge. It starts with packaging. It ends up with very personal stories on food sharing, on the social movement. So I hope we're on a good track in Poland. I would like to encourage everybody that has been on this webinar and wants to get involved to, contact people here personally. We've all put out the contacts. The reason is to strengthen civil society of this webinar. So I hope there's going to be more engagement with end consumers, maybe around the packaging area, but also in the volunteering part around food banks and food sharing. So I give the last minute to Pablo. No, Pablo says it's okay. So we're good. So I think so now I have another minute to talk. No, I would like to thank you everybody for being here, for sharing all this very nice input. We've had great contributions from the chat as well. From what I see, people were happy with the presentations. So please do stay in touch. And all the best for Polish civil society on food waste. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.